Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special episode of the Extra Mile, and we're cold opening today, but it's not for a bad reason. It's actually for a good reason, because for the first time in a long time, especially when it comes to being on this program, NASCAR actually got it right. On Sunday, Steve Phelps gave a speech to the NASCAR community where he said that NASCAR has to do more to confront racial issues, and this week they reacted. By Wednesday, or actually things started before that race when they removed the proclamation that all participants in the event must stand for the national anthem. That allowed for Kirk Price to do his now much talked about protest when he knelt during the prayer and the national anthem. And we've all seen that photo blasted around the internet by now. It was then announced that Bubba Wallace will be running a Black Lives Matter car during yesterday's Blue Emu 500. But the biggest news of the week came on Wednesday, just before, I believe, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when NASCAR announced that the Confederate flag will no longer be allowed at any of its events. And I'm going to welcome in my co-hosts for this evening, Caitlin Seam and Michael Ward. Ladies and gentlemen, this is we talk a lot about now breaking the internet. This was definitely a move that broke the sports internet and then went into pop culture internet, because everybody just stopped, looked up, and said, wait, they did what now?
Yeah, I was really impressed with the speed in which it spread, like this news spread. It was pretty impressive. I was talking about it before we actually went on air here, but one of the things that impressed me the most was how many people on some of my social media accounts that I almost was pretty confident didn't even, if they knew what NASCAR was, they did not give two flies about it. And they were commenting, and it was in good ways, about this happening. And so it was just interesting, because usually with NASCAR, you have your NASCAR people, and that's about the only ones who ever talk about NASCAR. And so for literally all of these other people to kind of come out and start talking about it, and in a positive light because of a decision they made, like you said, they did something right, and they did something to get attention, not only in a good way, but in a positive way for how everything's going on right now. And I think one of the funny parts to me, at least from what I've seen, is I've been kind of blown away by the amount of positivity that came out of this has so quickly drowned out all of the little negative haters in the world, which I also enjoyed. Like, I've seen so much good come out of this already in a day. And I think that's the part I've appreciated the most so far.
And there was one person that we're going to talk about that was not a fan of it, but that person did not have a good day on social media, which we will talk about here before we go to break. First, Michael, what have you seen on social media? Because it feels like the reaction has been overwhelmingly positive, although there are those people that have been negative and crying out that NASCAR is dead, even though it's not.
I am 100% with this. 100%. It's been so many people that I've known do not like NASCAR because of the stigma that it is a sport for races. Mm-hmm. And it's not a sport for races, it's a sport for motorsports fans. And it got me ashamed to watch it, because it's actually, there's some really cool stuff, and the history is great. And the racing is good, so I wanted more people to watch it. But they were just like, I can't watch a sport that supports racism. And they don't involuntarily support racism, but you know, when you look at the flag stands and you see the Confederate flag and everything like that, you're just like, oh no, this isn't for me. I can't get with this. And This has been a stigma for NASCAR for years, since me and Darryl were young boys. Mm-hmm. This has been a stigma for years, and they finally shook it off. They're finally abolishing this, and I'm here for it. I'm here for that. I was here for that freaking Black Lives Matter paint scheme. Can you believe something like that is on the track?
I'm getting that die-cast when it comes out, 200%.
I'm getting that.
And I was going to step in and say this, Michael. I remember somebody asked me, why do I watch that racist white sport? And I never thought about it that way. As a teenager, it's just cars going around in a circle. How is it racist? And then I talked about it in the article I wrote today, where it basically said NASCAR got a second chance this week to be on the right side of history when it comes to racial issues. Because the first time was with Wendell Scott back in 1963. Wendell won the race in Jacksonville, and they flagged Buck Baker for the win. Buck Baker got the win. Got the trophy, got to kiss the trophy girl, and got to go home. They didn't acknowledge Wendell Scott's win until everybody else had left. So NASCAR had a chance then to really bring more African Americans into the sport. It failed, or they failed, not it, they failed to live up to the opportunity, and NASCAR remained this majority white sport for many years, and it's already, its main hub of fans is in the Southeast. We know how the South and racial issues are. There's plenty of history books written about it. None of it's pretty. Right. So a lot of people, whether rightly or wrongly for NASCAR, took all of that and then put it on NASCAR and said, this is the sport of old Southern white racists. And NASCAR has tried to get out of that during their boom period as they're trying to become more of this racing for all sport, which it really is. They've had some serious missteps. There was an official actually sued the sport for racial discrimination in the mid-2000s, and then, of course, the Kyle Larson N-word controversy. So NASCAR this week got a do-over. It is a rare do-over when it comes to racial issues, and this time, they knocked it out of the park. The Confederate flag needed to go. It probably helped that Bubba Wallace went on Don Lemon's show on Monday and said, yeah, this flag's got to go. So they kind of had to make something happen. They did, and the response from people was overwhelmingly positive. Caitlin and I were talking before the show. We were watching Bernard Pollard on on Twitter during the race on Wednesday. He's ex-NFL safety, had never watched a race before. Bubba Wallace, using the Black Lives Matter car on Wednesday, brought him to watch the race, and now he's a fan. And I bet if he did it, that means there's plenty of other African Americans that tuned in on Wednesday because of Bubba Wallace, saw what happened, and said, maybe I will stay around. And a lot of people have said they want to go to races when fans are allowed again. So, Caitlin, I'll agree. This I have a big moment
5 friends who want to go see NASCAR now.
Mm-hmm.
I have 5. They never liked the NASCAR because of the stigma of it's for races. Yep. When that happened, they said, oh, yeah, I'm watching it now.
Yep. And
this is great. This is really, really great.
It is, and there was someone actually posted on Twitter, and I wish I had saved it when I saw it. They posted the social media engagements for NASCAR in the wake of that, and on Twitter they gained like 2,000 new followers. They regained almost all of the followers, that they lost in the week before. The Facebook numbers were even better. They actually got back to the number they were at before, or the week before they had made this announcement. There's about 5 million followers on the Facebook of NASCAR. They had lost some during that week, and then one day they got them all back. NASCAR is at a point right now where if they keep putting on good races and they keep doing the right thing when it comes to this issue, they are finally going to get that more diverse, younger crowd that they want, because people of Caitlin's age, my age, and Michael's age were a lot more politically conscious, and we're not going to spend money in ventures that don't align with our values. And if NASCAR can take themselves and align with these values, they're going to put more people in the stands. If they put on great races like some of the races they've had since they've come back, they're going to keep those people. Now, before we continue, I just want to say we do have a guest today. Steve Luvender is coming on. Steve is a sim racer, and he has also built two of the most well-used websites for NASCAR fans. One is for iRacing with trading paints. The other is the random fantasy game that you see a lot of people playing during the racing weekends. We're going to get to talk to him. We're going to ask him about some of this as well, because he was also one of the people that actually hit me up about what was happening. There is positive, and now we do have to talk about the negative. One of the big, I don't know if you want to call this a big negative, but one of the negatives are NASCAR did technically lose a team out of this, as Ray Ciccarelli basically posted on Facebook that he was closing up shop. Actually, his wife posted on his Facebook account that they were going to sell everything because of the Confederate flag ban. They were not going on past 2020. Stephon Parsons and Bailey Curry, both of whom were driving for that team, both of them are no longer affiliated. Ray's going to be driving his own truck at Homestead. We'll see if he even goes past this weekend, if he feels this strongly about it. Unfortunately for Ray, for whatever positive response he got, there was a ton and a ton and a ton of dunking on Ray Ciccarelli by social media pundits across the aisle after he made this statement. While I will not agree with any of that, as it's kind of ironic, because I know Ray, I met him at Pocono, I actually interviewed him for a class project that I did, and now to see this happen, it was surprising, but guys, it's kind of a, I'm not surprised the reaction, but this is kind of the proof that the people that are going to try and stand for this Confederate ban, they're not going to have a lot of friends out there.
Absolutely not. And I think, too, is, he's really not the only one that was really affected by this, whereas he decided to be an idiot and show himself the door. I think the better one that kind of stood as proof of how serious this is going forward with everything in NASCAR is what happened with the helmet designer, which I'm sure you were going to talk about anyway. But I think one of the things, and this is the thing, is that I hate that Bubba Wallace had to be the spokesperson for NASCAR, because it is not, in my opinion, it is not a black man's job to change all of these white people's minds about something that really, if you think about it, is a white issue, because we're the ones who started this. And I personally believe that it's not his job to fix it. It's everybody else's kind of thing. But he did take a stand. He took a front, being the only black male racer in this industry right now, and for NASCAR, I should say. And he really led a powerful charge that we are clearly seeing how good this is going. But also, in the wake of this, we're seeing how serious a lot of these big named drivers are taking this as well. And so, yes, Bubba led the charge, but it's nice to see that he is not on his own on this island, that other people are clearly backing him, and not just like a muffled backing, but clearly saying there is a line and you need to be on this side of it. And to me, that speaks more volumes. So sorry, Ray. I hope you left the key inside of the mailbox, because I'm not really interested in you returning anytime soon. And you are clearly the only one, for the fact that nobody else made a gripe, especially the drivers. You don't see anybody else being like, you don't see a main driver being like, you know what, I can't do this. Or even a main named, like, that somebody's steeped in this history. Like, you don't see Chase Elliott being like, he took away the Confederate flag, so now I'm not going to race anymore because my dad, yada, yada, yada.
Caitlin, sorry, I have to cut you off. Our guest is calling in. We're going to be right back after this, and we're going to get everything reset. We'll be right back.
Were you listening to a great game on USRN, but then the Wi-Fi crashed in the final seconds? Or do you simply want to listen to the best calls we here at USRN have to offer? Well, then you need to go check out our Audio Boom page. It holds a collection of our best calls that you don't want to miss. How do I get there, you ask? You can download the Audio Boom app and look up Ultimate Sports Radio, or simply go to audiobook.com/Ultimate Sports Radio. And as always, thanks for listening and making USRN one of the most talked about sports networks on Mixler.com.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
Hey, what's up, sports fans? You're looking for a different type of sports talk show, something you haven't heard before? You gotta check out the BS3 Sports Show every other Saturday on 2 Live Stews Radio, 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. Sports talk at its finest. Always have great guests, playing some good hip-hop. You don't want to miss it. Make sure to tune in to the BS3 Sports Show every other Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Here comes the pitch, and it comes in wide.
On the BS3 Sports Show.
Welcome to the BS3 Sports Podcast. We hope your experience with us is amazing. Sports talk, comedy, social issues, and more. BS3 is the best source.
Can you dig it,
Hi, I'm Brian McLaughlin. In the National Football League, there are approximately 17 million total fans.
I'm Andrew Guzman. My Dallas Cowboys make up almost 9 million of those fans.
And my Seahawks have a very loyal fan base of around 4 million.
That's more than 3/4 of all the fans.
That's absolutely correct, Andrew. And on the Common Ground Football Podcast, we'll be talking about the good, bad, and the ugly of these teams.
We'll have weekly picks, discuss transactions, injuries.
And we'll chat about the rest of the league, too.
Blake freaking Bortles?
Oh, yes. And Captain Andrew Luck.
Excellent. What about Fitzmagic?
Oh, let's not get carried away now.
Oh, all right then.
Join us each week at commongroundfootballpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcast.
It's going to be
Awesome!
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We're coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Okay, you can listen to all those great shows here on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We are finally back. We have our guest with us. I'll give you a peek behind the curtain. So we typically use Skype to get everybody in for the phone calls, except for, as you've seen over the past few weeks, Skype doesn't like to play well with phone calls and people on the service also being in the call. So it kept crashing. So I would get to Steve. It would crash when I would try to bring in our co-hosts, Michael and Caitlin. So Steve is now on my phone. The phone is next to the microphone. They can hear him. Hopefully y'all be able to hear him. Please let me know if you're in the chat. And we're going to go on from there. So let me introduce our guest. If you've been on NASCAR Twitter for any period of time, you know who this guy is. He makes a ton of the hilarious GIFs, or GIFs, however you pronounce it, during a racing weekend. And if you're an iRacer, you're definitely affiliated with his work, as Trading Paints has become the de facto official paint system or the official paint sharing system, let me get that right, of iRacing. He also makes the he also makes the NASCAR fantasy game, which is the random fantasy game we all pick, where it's basically RNG for which driver you're going to have each week. Sometimes you get a good driver, sometimes you get one of the RWR brigade, which is not as fun, especially this week with Joey Gase failing tech 5 times. So, he's also special to me because me and this guy raced for about a decade or for 3 years. We've known each other about a decade. A great friend of mine and a great friend to the racing community. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us for a good 15 minutes, Steve Luvender. Steve, welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks, Darryl. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys giving me the call here.
Yes, I've actually wanted to do this for a while. Now that we finally got a good format, I thought I would call you in. So, Steve, as I said at the beginning, you made the random fantasy game. You put together Trading Paints. You've been big on the coding side of things. How did that start? Because you were coding things even back when we were racing, and you would put together like the soundboard of FTSR Greatest Hits. So how did you get into all of that?
Oh my goodness, I forgot about that particular one. some gold on there.
Yes.
No, I've always just been interested in technology, especially on the web. Since I was probably in 5th grade, just always interested, in computers. Who needs friends when you can, code something up on the computer? But no, it's just been something I've been doing a long time, and it's just a hobby, and I just like to get creative and just have fun with things online. But that's really it.
So I know the one game everybody has had fun with is the random fantasy game. Where did the idea for that come from?
It's kind of a weird, kind of a convoluted history, I guess. Many years ago, there was a game on a NASCAR racing online community forum thing where every week you'd pick the race winner. So you would type in, who you think is going to win the race that week. Eventually, I wasn't doing so well at it, and a couple of other friends, I think, were kind of in the same boat. So they were just like, what if we just use a random number generator to make our picks each week and see what happens? Clearly it's not working out by me manually making a selection based on an informed decision. So what the heck, let's just have a computer do it. So we did that for, I think, a season. And then I forget what happened to the site. The site shut down or something like that. So we were just like, well, okay, well, that was fun. And so, like, I guess the next year I was kind of just messing around, I don't even remember how it came about exactly and turned into the game we played today, but, basically now it's a whole, a whole system that I coded up and put together now where you can, click the button on this website and it gives you the car number for who you got to cheer for this weekend. And it's like connected to Twitter. We score points and everything, and it's become this big thing, which is never not the intention. It was just kind of meant to be a fun thing, and it still is a fun thing. But it's just kind of silly and fun to see how it all progressed now because it I didn't set out for it to be this thing that 1,000 people play every week.
Yeah, so does it surprise you seeing all these people? Some industry folks are also, clicking that button at the end of the race on Sunday, seeing who they get next week, and you see everybody, talking about who they got. I know a lot of us get on there, see Brennan Poole as our pick. We're like, oh, well, that's going to be fun. So,
yeah, it's cool to see like so many people doing it, and so many people who are kind of a glutton for punishment. Because you mentioned the RWR cars that are not necessarily known for their speed and performance. You could get one of those guys and have to cheer for them. And, I love it. But my favorite thing is, when somebody's all excited, gung ho at the end of the race, I'm going to go, see who my pick is for next week, and clicks the button, and then you just you can tell they get like a terrible car, and they reply to the tweet, and they're like, oh, like I can't believe it. Like it's funny to see just the rage and reaction sometimes.
It is a lot of fun. And then even before that, trading paints. And I remember actually using trading paints way back, and we're going to date ourselves here, way back when iRacing first became a thing, and then they started releasing the paints. I remember trading paints came about. What was your inspiration to actually put that together?
So iRacing came out with the ability to have custom paint schemes in it was like the end of 2009.
Okay.
And Dale Earnhardt Jr., who was always really big into sim racing, kind of gave everybody a sneak peek in the iRacing community, and he was like, hey, this is what's coming soon, this is what's coming in January of 2010. Here's it'd be kind of cool if there was a way for we have all these tens of thousands of people racing online. It would be cool if there was some way to exchange your different custom paint scheme files that you make. So at that point, I kind of reached out to a friend of mine, Sean Brandt, who's a programmer, who's like an actual programmer, not just someone like me who messes around in their code editing stuff. But I reached out to him, and we've been working together ever since, and so that's kind of how that came about. It's kind of inspired by something Dale Jr. wrote.
Okay, so Dale Jr. wrote that, and you get this thing together. What has been so we've seen trading paints basically grow to where it's basically the official art trade for iRacing, where everybody puts their paints up, and everyone, they download everybody's paints, they get to see everybody's cool custom cars. How does it feel to know that something that you helped create is now so widely used by the iRacing community?
It's really cool. Like, people share the work that they create with us all the time, like on Twitter and things. It's cool, but at the same time, it's a lot of pressure. If something goes wrong, or we have a whole bunch of servers. If one of the servers acts up in the middle of the night, we've got to be on call and be ready to fix that. And so in a lot of ways, it's still kind of operated like it's a hobby, because it is, and it always has been. Mm-hmm. But because of the size and the way things have just grown over the years, we've had to formally turn it into a business, which is not something I was really ever planning to do or get into. But that's just a necessity to keep the things powered on and keep things growing. So that part of it's a little scary and sketchy at times, because it's new to me, and I'm not necessarily experience in that side of things because it's just a hobby for me. But it is really cool to see all the work people do and just having so many people use the site. I think we're at 150,000 users at this point.
Whew, that's a lot of people. That is a far cry from when I think it was maybe a couple of hundred of us at the beginning and at the end of 2009, which was my second year in college, just to make myself feel like a fossil, just to see how far iRacing has come. And there's a ton of cars that have now been added to the service as well. So for the uninitiated, how does it work with iRacing, putting out the systems for people to be able to paint the cars and then upload them?
So iRacing's team does a really wonderful job with, releasing new content and creating new content. And by that I mean laser scanning cars and like really precisely coding in all these, great race cars we see in real life. So with each new car they create, they also create a painting template, like a blank coloring page almost for each and every car. And then people can, you and I can just go on there and use one of those templates, use our favorite painting software like Photoshop or something like that and create their designs. And then that kind of, then you can upload it to Trading Paints, and we serve the files basically at that point. So when you join a race in iRacing, which, Darryl, I hope to see you again soon on there. But
at some point.
You can join a race on there, and then our program can detect the other people who are in your session and then grab their paint files, put them on your computer, and then you see their cars, basically. Okay. I probably made it sound way more complicated than it actually is.
It actually sounds a lot simpler now that I've listened to it. But, yeah, I will definitely try to get back on there. Hopefully it will go better than the first time I tried it. But then again, that was several revisions and tire models and so much stuff ago. That was back when the NASCAR Class B oval car was basically an ice rink. From what I've seen, it's much better now. But let's get into the what we've seen this past week, dude, because NASCAR, for the first time in forever, they've had a week of solid good news. And I know I've seen a lot of the positive affirmation from Twitter. What have you seen from your side of the Twitter with everyone reacting to the most recent news with the Confederate flag ban and the Black Lives Matter car for Bubba? And then some of you actually put Black Lives Matter cars on Trading Paints as well. So what have you seen from your side of things?
Yeah, it's been such a really cool, I think it's been 10 or 11 days now. Basically, once the calendar flipped to June, there's just been all these cool steps that NASCAR's taken to be more inclusive and show that it's time to really move forward and be more welcoming and just to make improvements. So it was really cool to see all that stuff. I've seen so much positivity about it on Twitter. I think there are some people saying that you always have the negative people who are just I hate this change. I grew up with this, so I don't want it to change. I don't, so I mean, that part of it's disheartening to see as a fan and as someone who I guess is closely tied to things these days. But I definitely saw more positivity than negativity, and at the end of the day, who cares about the negativity? Because this is a step that needs to be taken. These are things that we need to everybody needs to get behind this and be accepting of it. So it's so cool to see that. It's so cool to see like different sports stars live tweeting the race last night. That's so cool. And
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's just I'm so pumped to see those changes.
And I think the best thing, and I said this before, and I think you'd agree, the best thing NASCAR can do now is just put on good races, because now you've got people looking at you, and they put on some great races. The majority of yesterday's race was good. Yes, we didn't see a lot of the bumping and banging the last 100 laps of Martinsville, and we are going to talk about that on this program. Now, we're all excited with the big news. We are going to talk racing eventually in the show, but, everybody was excited. You know, the first half of that race was really good. First Martinsville race at night. The last 100 laps, some people kind of poo-pooed it, but for all in all, it was a good race. Now we're going to Homestead, which usually put on great races as the season ender. Now we're going to this track at a different point of the season, but the track always raced well with the progressive banking. In my opinion, it's the only track where progressive banking actually works well. So NASCAR has a great opportunity over the next couple of weeks to really build up a fan base that's going to be excited to go to the racetrack whenever we're allowed to have fans again.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think Homestead's a great track, and I'm so curious and excited to see how things race without a championship on the line this weekend. I feel like in championship races, you might have guys who don't take risks and don't, put things a lot on the line because they don't want to interfere with the championship battle too much, or be looked at as a bad guy for ruining a championship contender's run. But if it's, a relatively, just a race in the middle of the season, which we haven't really seen at this Homestead before, it should be pretty cool. And I'm excited, and I'm excited for, like we were saying, just the new eyes on NASCAR right now. I think it's a really cool time.
Yeah, it is a really good time to jump on the NASCAR bandwagon. A lot of great there's a lot of good young drivers to check out. There's a lot of great content on social media. Steve is one of those people that have been putting that content out. We've been watching with the GIFs all season long, so definitely give him a follow. How do you what are the product, or let me slow down. What are some of the tools that you use to make those GIFs on a weekend basis? Because you get those things out pretty much like 15 seconds after it happens. There it is on Twitter for all of us to enjoy and laugh at.
It's never it's not really anything that I ever planned to start doing, but then a couple seasons ago I just started recording them like in the middle of the race, because I realized that people would say, hey, can I, somebody's just looking for a replay of some just like goofy moment during the race, or just something unusual. And but no, I use YouTube TV. So I don't have cable at my house, so I have YouTube TV. So I get my live TV that way, which is all just like internet based. So that way I can watch the race on my computer, and then I have a program called Giphy Capture that can capture a portion of your screen and turn it into a GIF. So basically when the race is playing live, I can just capture it right from my screen using the software, and it's super simple to use, and I love using it. And but no, it's as simple as that.
And we love enjoying the content. So before we get out of here, what are some of the things you got planned? You got anything special planned for the rest of the year, NASCAR wise, or anything?
It's hard to say. And that's not me saying like, oh, I don't know, it's a secret. That's just me. That's just like I don't have anything specifically planned. I mean, obviously we're going to keep going with trading paints and growing that and just trying to do a better job with showcasing the really cool work that comes out of the community. Like right now, we're trying to just put together a collection of, for instance, like Black Lives Matters cars that people have made, and basically curating those into a list and sharing and saying like, hey, if you're looking to support this, here's a collection of cars that we kind of handpicked from a community that you can go on and race. So we're looking at doing things like that kind of more often. But as far as NASCAR projects, who knows? We're always doing fun things. With NASCAR.com, each week we post a collection of some of my favorite GIFs we captured throughout the race, and we're always just doing fun things on there. So nothing specific planned in the coming weeks, but maybe that'll change.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. And if you guys want to give Steve a follow, head over to at Steve Luvender on Twitter and check out his GIF reviews on our NASCAR when they put up some of his favorite gifts every week at the conclusion of the races. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. We're definitely going to have you back on at some point. And yes, I will be on iRacing with you guys and the Court Boys at some point. Hopefully it goes a lot better than last time because I was really bad at this. Anyway, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this. Don't go anywhere.
Lopan, they didn't even want you. Heck, they didn't even want me. But you know what? Right about now, they have no choice. Looking for the real sports talk? Talk that's for us, the people? Look no further. The Wait a Minute Show, a prime time sports comedy cocktail that tucks you in at night. Join me and Lopan Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 2livestewsradio.com and Saturday 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Wait a Minute Show.com. Sounds like a plan to me. Ain't that right, Lopan? Indeed.
You're listening to a presentation of the Ultimate Sports Radio. Wrestling fans in the podcast world, you are in the right place to listen to the right show, the premier show in the professional wrestling podcasting world. This is Ring Rambling Radio, and you are listening to one of the co-hosts. I am Martin Sandoval, a.k.a. the SoCal Saint, along with my two co-hosts, the lovely Felicia and my boy Matt. Yes, every Saturday or every other Saturday morning, you can listen to us, the premier wrestling team, giving you the premier wrestling news, rumors, updates, event discussions, everything that has to do with professional wrestling. You're in the right place. IE Sports Radio presents Ring Rambling Radio. Don't miss it, because it's just too sweet.
We're back here on the Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio. Your feed for all that is sports. Again, thank you so much to Steve Luvender for joining us for a good 15 minutes. And let us get into the races that happened last weekend here in the last 20 minutes. We'll start with, I guess we can talk about Atlanta and Martinsville as well. A quick summary of Atlanta was Kevin Harvick kicked everybody's behind. It's pretty much all you need to know about that race. Kevin Harvick is really, really good at Atlanta. Wednesday, Martinsville, everything, all eyes were on Bubba Wallace and that Black Lives Matter car. I think 100%, the three of us, we loved seeing it, and he ran really well with it, too.
Yeah, he was. It's like he was driving with passion in his eyes.
Yeah, he finished in both stages in the top 10. Unfortunately, they had problems in the final stage, and they're dropping back to the end of the lead lap cars, able to rally back to 11th, but Caleb Michael, I don't really think it mattered that much. To see that car up there and doing well, it felt good for everybody.
That was a great part about it.
I'm really hoping, too, is that this will really lend to so much more awareness of what's going on, but I'm hoping, too, is that he'll be able to land a couple more really big-time sponsors, because I feel like they could really use that money to really push them up a little bit more in the tier.
Mm-hmm.
So that when we have things like this, they aren't falling short in the last half of the race. They're able to still push through with their equipment.
Yeah, they could. This would,
because he hung with them.
Yeah, he did.
There was no, you know what I mean? Like, it was not a, oh no, his skill was right there. He handled it. We just need to get his equipment to be able to last.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
great driver, just not the best equipment.
Yeah, unfortunately, that RPM team hasn't had the best equipment for a while now, but this will be a good opportunity for one of those companies that, you know, put your money where your mouth is and help this guy go somewhere. Write that $1 million check. That's going to help that team build, because Bubba has the talent. We've seen now with the Chevrolets running better that RPM team is starting to run consistently in the top 15, in the top 10, at top 5 at one point in that race. All that team needs is a little influx of cash to get those cars up to another level, and I think Bubba Wallace will win races. The other big news out of Wednesday's race was the tire wear. Everybody wanted a tire that wore at Martinsville. We already saw what tire wear did to the race at Atlanta. Martinsville seemed to be even worse, where NASCAR brought that softer tire. And this is one of those points where the lack of practice time, I think, hurts, in that they don't get to lay down the rubber before they actually do the race. So the first time Martinsville really saw any rubber on Wednesday was when they went out for the pace lap. So early in that race, tires were getting chewed up to bits. And they showed them on the telecast that FS1 put on. Those tires looked like they were in bad shape. So you got to see who was the best on their tires, but man, I just wish they could do just like an hour practice session before the race, just so we don't have to worry about these tires and any issues that could come, because these tires this rubber was really jacked up. It really was.
Here's the thing, and I get where you're coming from, but also I'm kind of loving how random this all is right now. Like, I kind of love it. Like, I love that we are really testing not only the drivers, but we're testing the crew chief. I bet you that the engineers on these race teams have not had to use their brain, like, even an eighth of, like, on average of what they had to use it since we've come back from the hold. Like, they actually have to think about this stuff, and and now you really have to deal with the communication with your driver, because, man, you don't know what you got. You hope you got it right. And as we saw at Martinsville, some of those cars swung hard in the wrong direction. You had major guys going a lap down immediately, and you're just like, yo. Like, I mean, I was laughing a little more than I probably should have, because you're usually used to, like, so many of these drivers just dominating and just going, and they actually were struggling, and they were actually having to work through what their car was doing. So I get where the rubber, I understand, but part of me absolutely is loving the little bit of chaos that this is adding to the game.
Definitely has added a lot of chaos, because we saw, like, the JGR cars have been struggling since
minus
we had no practice. Minus Truex ended up winning the race, dominated the final stage, you know.
After a stupid penalty that really shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, but we've seen the penalty system.
But he came back, yo.
Yeah, he did. And did you see they brought back an electric version of the giant saw?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody follows Cole Pern or not, who is the former crew chief for Martin, but it was pretty funny because he even jumped on it. He was like, you can still have a battery-powered one. But it was kind of funny because he had to do his little peep in. He was like, actually. But yeah, it felt kind of fun. I was like, wow, we're circling all the way back around here.
Yeah,
it was funny too, though, because I had to. My dad is also a Martin Truex Jr. fan, as I am, and he works at night, and so he was going to watch the race when he got home from work, and so I was heading to bed, and I didn't want to say anything because we're usually watching the race together via phone, but he was at work on a Wednesday night, and so I was just like, well, I'm really excited, but I don't want to tell him anything, so I was just like, it was a good race. And then I remembered that at one point he was nearly a lap down, and it really sucked because you brought out the saw, you had your penalty, and you're like, crap. And I was like, it's worth sticking through, Dad. It sucks for a little while, but hang in there. And he ended up calling me this morning, and he's like, Caitlin, I was really doubting your text for a while. He's like, how does this get any better? So I thought it was entertaining. And also, I vote 100% for a night race at Martinsville for the rest of time.
Yes. I
loved it.
Love having a night race at Bristol. Or not Bristol, obviously Bristol, but also Martinsville. And I'm going to make the both races at night, even the playoff race. I mean, the playoff race is basically 100%. At night now, with them starting at 3 o'clock in the winter, and the sun goes down at 5. So it's basically a night race at this point. If there's one... Did you see what they did with the lights at the end of the race, though?
It was so great. I loved it. It was a smart move. It was fun.
Michael, did you see the little light show at the end of the race?
Oh, the rave lights? Yeah.
Yeah, the rave lights are so great. All I needed was the glow sticks on a string to start swinging them around. Like, it was awesome.
I loved the effect it gave on the track, too, like, whenever they'd scan out for it, and it hyped me up. Obviously I was hype anyway because my driver won, but, like, it was just fun with the little nuance and I don't know. I feel like I haven't enjoyed a race like that in a while. Like, I, for once, I could appreciate it. Like, NASCAR did something right, and I could enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it was a good race for the new people to watch, too. Like, I feel like it was a great intro race.
Yeah, I think anybody, and we saw that as Bernard Pollard, we talked about earlier, was tweeting, and a lot of other people that were watching the race for the first time. They got a good one to see, and I hope they stick around for this week at Homestead. That's also going to be a good race, as Martin Truex Jr. dominated the final stage, or actually last 100 laps, I'm sorry. He was the only JGR car to really have a good day, as the other three had issues. JGR does not look strong.
No, they really struggled. But too, he lapped a lot of cars at the end. But when he was racing for the lead, I think it was about when he was third that it was brought to my attention. But Truex was the only Toyota on the lead lap.
Yes.
So JGR struggled, but Toyota as a whole really struggled.
Well, it's basically, I just said JGR because they're basically all JGR cars.
That's true. Point. I thought Johnson was going to have it for a while, and they swung the wrong way at the end.
Yeah, Jimmy ran well, and unfortunately his car fell off, and then him and Bubba started fighting for 10th place, and unfortunately, the 41 of Cole Custer got involved. He was several laps down, ended up breaking up the battle, and it was weird to see Jimmy Johnson fall back to 10th, but it was actually nice to actually see him up there and lead some laps at some point.
I think I jinxed him.
Well, we are good at jinxing. The Hendrick Motorsports cars did have a good day as well, which they desperately needed because the last few races, they have had none of the speed that they had when we first came back. And before we get out of here, we do want to talk about IndyCar. So they raced at Texas for the Genesis 300. That race got hampered by the PJ1 that was on the track from November, they said on Twitter. Apparently, Texas Motor Speedway did power wash the outside line of the racetrack where the PJ1 was put down. And unfortunately, the IndyCar driver still couldn't find grip, and it was really a 1.5 groove race the entire time. But Caitlin, you actually thought the race was pretty good.
Yeah, I found it entertaining. Minus, it really, how you summed up Atlanta with Harvick just dominating, it was really what it turned into here. Like, Dixon was on a completely other level than everybody else. And once you got clean air, like, he literally, for when he first took the lead, because he got it from Joseph Newgarden, who was doing decent leading, Dixon got up to him, and in no time, he was 4 seconds ahead of him. And I'm like, what the heck? Literally, I was texting, oh my goodness, I can't believe he already has a 4-second lead. to my boyfriend, by the time I looked up, it went up to 8 seconds. Like, Dixon was just gone. But something that I thought was interesting, and while they were dealing with the issue on the track with everything going on with the grip, but also not only that, but Firestone has actually been closed because of COVID. So they were actually running last year's Indy 500 tires at this race. So they were only lasting about 30 to 35 laps on these tires before they were having to pit. And so that was kind of an interesting thing to see that strategy having to play into it too, because of the tire wear situation as a whole, because it wasn't necessarily the tire that they would have brought had everything been normal. But you did see where it was hard to pass. I mean, it was a lot like a NASCAR moment in that case and scenario, where usually I feel like in the past we've seen where Texas is challenging, but I do enjoy Texas for IndyCar, but you noticed a difference though in the passing ability of those cars. And I think, unfortunately, Rosenquist was the best example of that, where he was really the only car to be able to challenge Dixon, who's his teammate, and was really showing promise. And near the end of the race, he was really gunning, making a move for it. And he was on the outside making pass. And you see, as soon as that track and those tires go, this doesn't work for us. And he ended up turning and wrecking. So I think it would have been a lot different of a race had there, and I think a lot of it, it's talking to, just like with Martinsville and those, you don't have any good rubber down for these tires on these tracks. It really does make a difference. And I think, that was just a big culprit in that too, and trying to figure it out. So it could have been a better Texas race. It wasn't the best one, but it was still, I felt like, a good intro race to the IndyCar guys coming back for their first race. Connor Daly had a great run. He did top 10. It's his first year as a full-time ride in forever, so that was exciting. Actually, Andretti was in the top 10 for a good portion of the race, and then he had a little issue at the end and fell off. So it was interesting. The rookies really struggled. You can't really be surprised about that, for the fact that they haven't had any track time this year. So they did really struggle. Two of them ended up bad circumstance. One wrecked and took out another when he was coming down the track. So,
Oof.
Yeah, it was a little rough. I mean, just bad timing kind of thing. But I feel like overall it could have been a lot worse. I think it could have been a lot more of a boring race. Like I said, I thought it was interesting what they had to play with the tire wear. But I didn't think it was terrible. I watched it and I had a good time. I will compliment that they handle the victory lane thing a little bit better. I feel like that's the one thing I always kind of nitpick NASCAR about with the TV part, because as soon as in NASCAR the winner gets out of the car, they have a mic thrusted up into his face, and there's no time for them to put on a mask to have that conversation. And I feel like that's more on the network than anything, the more I've been watching this. But luckily, we got to see with IndyCar, they gave him enough space to put on the mask before they thrusted that mic up in his face. So it's like my one little, I just want him to get better at that, Fox. This is me talking to you guys. But it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible for the first race back for IndyCar.
Michael, what did you think of the IndyCar race, if you got a chance to look at it?
It was all right. It was a good race, but like I said, it was not as good as Martinsville. The racing was decent. That's all I gotta say. It's just, when a guy is so good like Dixon was that day, it's hard to really have an exciting race to watch. And also, I feel like the racing more in the midfield part of the competition would have been more interesting to watch when the driver is being dominant, but we're not directors, so you can only do so much.
Yeah, Dixon led 157 laps on Saturday night, and unfortunately, and this will be the last topic before we close out, Sato, Graham Rahal, Alexander Rossi all had issues. Sato actually crashes out in qualifying. They can't get the car fixed in time. He does not start. Rossi and Rahal both have communication issues between the Cosworth ECU and their engines, but due to social distancing guidelines for IndyCar, they actually had to bring those cars back to the pit box to have the Honda techs reset it so they could start. Usually the Honda techs would be right there to be able to reset the system and get it going, get the car off. So both those drivers started behind the 8 ball. So for Rossi and Rahal, their nights did not get off to good starts. And unfortunately, it's something that happened as a part of the quirk of the new COVID-19 guidelines that IndyCar is going to be using for pretty much the entire season, if we're being serious.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just part of it. I feel like, we're going to be looking back at some point on this season, and I think an understanding that it really was we're taking a big wild swing here. We're kind of on a new frontier when it comes to racing right now, with everything kind of switching up. But I think the ones who are going to stand out are the ones who embrace it. You can't fight against this. Complaining about it won't do you any good as a team. You just, it's really gonna, I feel like out of anything, it'll show how well you are at adapting in a scenario now. I think I think it's an interesting challenge, and it sucks when it's something like that where it's kind of out of your control, but it's part of racing, right?
Mm-hmm. So IndyCar will now be on about a month break before they get back going for the GMR Grand Prix. That'll be on July 4th at 12:15. A lot of people will be around to watch that because it's not like we're going to have fireworks this July 4th, at least in the sky, but there will be some on the racetrack. But before we go, we have to do Nearest the Win, and it has been a NASCAR-heavy Nearest the Win to start the season because they're literally the only thing that has run so far. So we've got Homestead coming up this Sunday. Caitlin, who you got?
Greg Biffle. No, I'm kidding. That was a joke.
That was interesting.
Matt White, do not write me down. It was the first name that came to my mind. Let's go. Let's go Logano. He was pretty feisty this past day, and I don't want to admit it, but let's go Logano.
I'm going to go with a previous winner at Homestead, back when this race was you win the race, you win the championship. I'm going to take the points leader, Kevin Harvick, to win yet again, this time at Homestead. Michael, who you got?
I'm going to go with somebody who I usually don't go with. Brad Keselowski.
We got the Penske boys. They're going to wreck each other now.
Yep. So Penske boys and Stewart-Haas Racing all represented.
Bye!
Probably a bad pick for me is Stewart-Haas. They did not unload from the truck well at all at Martinsville, and quick turnaround to Homestead. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. But we will be with you next week to talk about that, as it is now time to say goodbye for this episode of The Extra Mile. Remember, Caitlin's show, Not What It Seems, at 5 o'clock. Check out the iSports Radio website, iSportsRadio.com. Keep it locked to our social medias for all of the news that you may have missed on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember, if you missed any episode of any iSports Radio show, check it out on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, The Spreaker Show Reel, and other places where podcasts can be heard. Also, I'm at DK Jr. 12. Caitlin's at Caitlin Seam or at Seam Radio, and Michael's at Stargazer_FX if you want to talk to us during the week. So, with that being said, for Caitlin and Michael, thank you so much for our guest, Steve Luvender, for joining us. This has been The Extra Mile, and we will see you at the next green flag. Good night, everybody.